Hello, this is Professor Geissler at Cosumnes River College. Welcome to your class. We've got some exciting innovations around NetLab, which is the lab environment that you will be using for most of your labs, meaning to complete most of your lab worksheets for this course. And the NetLab that we're going to be using is specifically the Far North Regional Consortium's NetLab, which is located at Folsom Lake College. Not that that matters because you can get access to it from anywhere. And as of fall 2024, I have been using what they call an LTI integration, which means that you no longer have to worry about getting user accounts and passwords from NetLab. You can now get access to NetLab from within Canvas, and you can very easily just click on a couple of links to be able to go into NetLab and to make your reservation for when you wish to use it for the different kinds of labs that you need to complete for this class. So let me share my screen and show you guys where you need to go and how this is done. It's relatively straightforward because you're on Canvas, right? So what you're seeing here happens to be a spring 2025 class. And again, it is in Canvas. And here is the key to the kingdom, if you will, for NetLab. Notice I'm on the home page, which is the first page to log into, okay? And the link that I am talking about is in the area of your homepage below the announcements. So this one happens to be for a CISC 360 class, but this is any class that uses NetLab. It will fundamentally work the same way. And the link to look for is the one right here that says complete most lab worksheets via the NFNRC NetLab VE2 NetLab virtual environment. And NetLab VE2, by the way, is NetLab Virtual Edition 2. The NFNRC NetLab has 4 appliances. Not all of them have the same labs installed. So for this class, which is CISC 360, you will most likely be using NetLab VE2. If you are in another class, that number may be different, anywhere from 1 through 4. Okay, so now this is how easy it is. You don't need usernames and passwords anymore for NetLab separately. And those were never synchronized with the other Los Rios passwords anyway. So this is a step that will make it much easier for you. So if you click on this link right here to complete most lab worksheets, that will then take you to a module within Canvas, within your class, up at the very top that says access the NFNRC NetLab VE2, in this case, virtual lab environment or NetLab. Okay. Now, hang on, Dr. G. Could I also have gone to modules over on the left-hand side right here and gotten there the same way? Yes, you could have. Okay. Do I have to have this separate in-between link? Yes, that is one of the limitations of the LTI integration. So you can't just go directly there. So you have to click on one more link, and then actually one more we'll show you in just a second. But if you click right here to go to the NFNRC network environment, and then you need to click one more time, right? Because it says right here, this tool needs to be loaded in a new browser window. That's what we're going to do right here. And then one more click to go to My NetLab, and this is your logon screen. Notice no separate username, no separate password required. It makes it nice and easy for you to connect to your NetLab at any time. And notice it does know who I am, okay? And it will know who you are as well based upon your Canvas information. Now, why is it important that NetLab needs to know who you are? Well, because you actually need to create a reservation within NetLab for when you want to do certain work, okay? So if you click on the button that says New Lab Reservation, I've got some additional options that you won't have, okay? But in this case, I'm going to schedule a lab for myself, which is the option that you would also have, okay? And then the available classes in which you are enrolled. Notice my fall class from last semester is still active. You may still have other classes here as well if you've previously used NetLab. But no, we're going to use 2-to-1 for CISC 360 for spring 2025. I'm going to select that class. And now what I'm seeing, and again, you'll see the same thing, is the lab to complete. Why is it important that you select the correct lab? It is because the universal access that NetLab provides doesn't mean that all of the pods that you're going to be using for this class are the same. Okay, so different labs have different configurations. So you need to make sure that you select the correct lab for which you need to actually fill out your lab worksheets. And of course, you can get those lab worksheets from within Canvas. And I believe I've also set up a download within NetAcad, but I'll talk about that in just a second. So let's say you wanted to complete this first lab in NetLab. And by the way, you may have other lab worksheets. Okay, so specifically for CISC 360, there are other lab worksheets for Module 2, okay, for example, that are not here. So not all of your labs are going to be done within NetLab. So do double check in the class calendar which labs are due when, okay? But let's say you're ready to use the NetLab for lab 3.1.2.6, and that will correspond to your curriculum within NetAcad, the Cisco Networking Academy content that you'll be logging in separately. And there's another video about how to do that. And if you click on selecting that lab, when I set reservations, that means you can actually set aside a time for when you want to complete the lab. Okay, now that could be right now, or that could be in the future. You can set reservations for future dates. So I happen to be recording this on January 23rd, 2025. If you know that you've got nothing else tomorrow on Friday night, you could click for a reservation on the 24th. You could select a time, and notice right here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You can do it anytime from 1 in the morning, and I've got mine set for 24-hour time. So I've got a pod that I can reserve, and there are, for this class, there happen to be 16 pods. That's not always the case. Some classes may only have 8 pods, okay? And you don't have to stick with the same pod every time. You could be using different pods, okay? But let's say I want us to do some work tomorrow night at, I don't know, 6 o'clock, okay? So then I'm going to scroll down to 1800. I'm going to click right there. Now, careful. It's easy right here to just say submit, but I don't want you to do that, okay? In fact, I want you to click on the end time because, chances are you may need more than an hour or in this case, 50 minutes. I'll talk about that in just a second as well, to complete a lab. So if you click on the calendar icon right here, I would encourage you to set aside the maximum time that you have, which is 4 hours, okay? So in this case, it will be from 1800 to 2200 or from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And that's the maximum time you can set aside. If you don't need as long, that's fine. You can always finish and give up the time after you've completed the lab worksheet. But I always suggest to my students, book the longer time. And if you don't need it, you don't need it. Okay, but at least at that point, you'll now have guaranteed a time for you to be able to work in NetLab. Now, the one thing I do ask, okay, if you're not going to use your reservation after all, let's say something comes up for tomorrow night, and please do go in, log into NetLab the same way through Canvas that I showed you a little while ago, and please cancel your reservation, okay? Because that will make those resources available to other students who may need them. So my strong suggestion, and it's just a matter of courtesy and respect. If you're not going to use a reservation, go ahead and delete it. Okay. One more thing. Notice we set aside 4 hours, but it only says 3 hours and 50 minutes. Well, the reason for that is NetLab takes the last 10 minutes of each reservation to quote unquote clean up, okay, to shut down the virtual machines that you're going to be using, and then to get them ready for whoever may want to use them next. Now, as long as you know that, that's not an issue, okay? And NetLab does warn you as you're inside a reservation that the end is near. But I've also enabled the ability for you to extend your reservation. Now, keep in mind, the extension only works if nobody else has reserved your virtual environment after you. Okay, so if somebody else has used that same pod, which is, by the way, if I may so suggest, a good idea to kind of scroll over, maybe use one of the pods towards the end that people don't see right away. Okay, those tend to not be as busy, and therefore the likelihood that you'll have time to extend your reservation is higher. Okay, so, but just because you're coming up to the end of the reservation, that doesn't mean that necessarily all's lost. Do keep in mind one thing though. If you're starting a lab and you're not able to finish it within the time set aside in your reservation, that could be problematic, because if you're in the middle of a lab and you need to keep going, that is at some points dependent on work that you've previously done, and that could cause you an issue that you might have to actually restart the lab from scratch. Okay, so again, do give yourself the time. I would very strongly encourage you to give yourself those 4 hours, and then again move over, select one of the pods that aren't so busy, which tend to be the pods with the higher numbers. All right, so 4 hours maximum. I'm going to say submit. Okay, and I now have to have a reservation scheduled. You don't need to write that number down, because that's what you'll see when you go back. I'm going to click OK, and now here is my reservation. Now, for me, it happens to be an instructor reservation because I am, but for you, it will be a student reservation. Okay. Now, notice you can't currently get into this reservation because it's not scheduled to happen until tomorrow at 6 p.m. Okay. So for that reason, I am not able to access the reservation right now. Okay. Now, I can click on the reservation, however, and again, let's say something comes up for tomorrow. So to delete the reservation, to give it up, okay, notice the cancel reservation at the bottom button. Okay, so go and click on cancel reservation. You sure you want to do this? Say cancel. And now that reservation that you've made for tomorrow night has been canceled. And when you look at your list of reservations, there is nothing here. Okay, so that's how to start one in the future and how to cancel a future reservation. Now, let me show you, however, how that might work if you wanted to come to the lab right now. Okay, let's say you're going into NetLab, you just came from Canvas, and you want to right now do some work. And you click on the new reservation, you're going to do it again for yourself, and you're going to select the class in which you're enrolled, the current class, and you want to again do this first one right here, 3.1.2.6, as corresponds with your NetLab. And now, let's say, oh, look, there's it's the beginning of the semester. There aren't really any reservations here yet. Okay, but I'm going to show you right here by clicking on this button. Notice this pod number is increasing. Okay, so I'm going to go to pod number 12. There happens to be a total of 16 right here. Okay, but I'm going to go to pod number 12 right over here on the left-hand side. And now let's see, I want to start the reservation right now. Now take a look at the time. It is 9:28 a.m. as I'm recording this. Okay. Now, if I click right here underneath, notice this time starts with 9:30. Okay. That is not a big deal, because at this point in time, my clock just switched over to 9:29, and it would start right at 9:30. Okay. Which is not too bad. I have to wait a few extra seconds for the lab to get started. And it always takes a minute for the virtual machines to get started. However, let me go ahead and go to the previous screen. Let's see, I did want to start actually at 9:29. So if you notice, my mouse pointer is right underneath that red line. And that, when I click it, actually allows me to start at 9:29. Okay, so again, click right under that red line to make sure that the lab reservation will start immediately. Okay, and if not, so if you have to wait a few minutes, big deal, but why not if you can avoid it? Okay, so again, I've set a reservation starting at 9:29, and of course, by the time I'm done talking about it, there we go, it's 9:30, right? So not a big deal, but remember, give myself that extra time. So I'm going to give myself till 1:30 p.m. Okay, and it'll actually allow me to go that long, I think. Okay, and that's because it's already 9:30 at this point in time. I'm going to say submit. I now have a scheduled reservation, and here's my list. And notice now I have an Enter Lab button. Okay, I'm going to click that button because that will now allow me to access the pod that I have reserved within NetLab, happens to be pod number 12, so that I can now start working on my 3.1.2.6 lab on how to install Windows. Now, you're inside the pod, okay? And for this class, there happen to be two computers, a Windows 10 and a Windows 11 machine. This is going to be different for different pods, and this will certainly be different for different classes as well. Let's say if you're in one of the Cisco router switching security classes, okay, chances are you've got more devices and other devices here to configure, okay? Now, here's the one thing, and this is under the topology tab right here. The one thing I do not want you to use right here, careful, I do not want you to use is the content tab, okay? Because right here, you can actually view or download a PDF file that has the instructions for the lab. The reason I do not want you to use these PDFs is that I have actually created equivalent, well, slightly modified files in DOCX or Microsoft Word format that I want you to use. Okay, so I have taken these instructions and modified them slightly for your use, and the modifications in some cases have to do with the structure of the NetLab that we use here at CRC, and in other instances it has to do with where I want you to do screenshots, okay, to make sure that you're actually doing the work and you're successfully completing the lab. So do not use these PDF documents. Instead, I want you to use the documents that I make available to you via NetAcad or via Canvas. Now, if you click on the status tab up here on top, we currently have two virtual machines. Again, one Windows 10, one Windows 11. In this case, they're both powered on. That's good. You can actually turn those machines off and back on, okay? You've got some other options here. Here's your Windows 10. Now notice this is relatively big. This is the actual Windows 10 machine. So let me scroll down a little bit right here. Okay, so this is the virtual machine. If you click right here, there's going to be a username and a password. Okay, and you'll find that information within the lab worksheet for this lab. Okay, so, and the same with Windows 11. So here's a Windows 11 computer, and you'll find the same thing right here. Again, if you click, you want to log on. Here are your virtual machines. Now, a couple of things that may be helpful as you're working with it. I'm not going to log in at this point in time, but fundamentally, these machines will behave like regular machines, okay? Except you're not sitting at the actual computer. You're doing it virtually. And a couple of things that may come in handy. So this is the Windows 11 computer. If you click on the arrow up here, right next to Windows 11 OS, you can do things like undock, okay? And when you undock, and actually I'm not quite sure if it's going to show the way I want it to show here in my, let me change my share settings right here real quickly, because I want you to be able to see what this actually looks like. So let me see these share settings right here. And you should still be able to see this entire screen right here at this point in time. So if I click on undock, what I've now done is I've created a separate window right here in which I can see, in this case, my Windows 11 machine, okay? And you're still within a browser, so you could actually, you know, this behaves, again, like a window, okay? Move this, let's say you have multiple monitors on your computer, you could move this to another monitor, okay? Now this is now a separate window, and if you no longer want to have it viewed separately, you can dock it back, okay? And that will bring it back into the windows. You can also, depending on the display that you're using, change the settings of you know, of the display if you want to scale, you know, within your monitor, make things larger, make things smaller. You've got that possibility here as well, okay? And if you are properly logged in, you also have the ability to take a screenshot, okay? And chances are will have, with certain instructions, within the lab worksheets will have you do that somewhat regularly. Okay, so at that point in time, you're taking a screenshot of the virtual machine rather than a screenshot of your actual computer. Not that there's a huge difference, okay, but this one is a little easier. And this may not be enabled, as it currently is not in all NetLab labs. Okay. So again, this is where you would complete the NetLab. Again, you've got the instructions in a separate Word document, and that's where you would type your answers to into that Word document. I figure most of you, even though modern versions of Microsoft Word actually allow you to bring in PDF documents and then modify them, okay? But I figure it's easier for most of you because many of you use like Google Docs, for example, okay, to actually work with Google Docs or LibreOffice, if that's what you're using, okay, to fill in the answers and to place the screenshots into that separate document, which then at the end, by the way, you will save as a PDF before you submit it, because PDFs make it much easier, frankly, for me to do your grading, and more importantly, they tend to be less likely to bring viruses that you might have on your computers onto my computer. So don't send me the docx files, send me the PDFs, but the instructions inside those documents will say so as well as the instructions within the NetAcad where you're going to be submitting your labs. All right. So again, we've got a working pod. We could be doing this work right now, but I'm almost done with this demonstration of how NetLab works. So I'm not going to need this pod anymore. I'm done with what I need to do. So I'm going to go up here to reservation. And notice I've got a request more time option, but I don't need that right now. I've got almost 4 hours left. Remember, 3 hours, 50 minutes. Those last 10 minutes are not available to you. But instead, I'm going to end the reservation at this point in time. Okay. You may be able to change the exercise in some areas, in some classes, not in this one. But more importantly, we want to make these resources available to other students. Okay, I could just close these windows, but that's not what I want to do. Okay, what I want to do is I want to make sure that if I'm done, I'm going to have my fellow students be able to access these resources. If everything is reserved full and somebody comes in, I want them to be able to do this. So I'm going to click End Reservation now, and this will end the current reservation for all users of the pod. Are you sure you're finished? Okay, the short answer is yes, but before I click on, what do you mean all users of the pod, Dr. G? Are you saying that you can have multiple people go into the same pod? There is such a thing as a group reservation, okay? I don't use those a lot, but you may be able to collaborate with other students. And that's something that I'm not sure if you can set up, but typically I would need to, okay? But more interestingly, let's say you are working in NetLab and you have issues and you're running into problems and you need some help. You could actually contact the instructional assistant or me, your instructor, and I can actually connect to your session within NetLab so that I can look over your shoulder, if you will, virtually, or the instructional assistant could, to assist you with any work that you may need to do within NetLab, so that we can both be looking at the same time. Now, we could also be in a Zoom session, right, and then communicate. And there's no audio connection. It's just that I will be able to see, or the instructional assistant will be able to see the work that you're currently doing, okay, so that I or they can make sure that you're doing things properly. So that's an option. And if you happen to be doing this during my office hour, and I'm not busy, I'd be happy to help answer any questions, of course. And again, the same with the IA. Of course, keeping in mind they're not going to be able to spend 4 hours, neither am I. But to get you over to the next hump, if you will, across any questions, any problems you might encounter. So in this case, I am in fact going to end the reservation. I'm going to say yes. Now my reservation has ended. I'm going to say okay. And I'm now back to a screen within NetLab where I have no reservations. Okay. And at this point in time, do you need to log out of NetLab? No, not really, because you never really logged in. Well, you did, but not that you noticed. So you could go up here and log out, but you don't have to. Okay. And at this point in time, notice that this account may only be accessed from your LMS. So at this point in time, you couldn't just hit, say, like refresh, okay? So if I'm right here and let's say I want to go back into NetLab, I'm going to go right here and yeah, notice, okay, so this account may only be accessed from your LMS. And so, or this, you may encounter this as well, but not to worry. In order to solve that problem, go ahead and close, and then you can actually go back. No, you can't. Okay, you have to go all the way back to Canvas. So close this, close the tab, go back to Canvas, click on Home, or click on Modules. Either one will work. Again, here's that link within most lab sheets within. Okay, let me show you the one in modules just as well. Typically located near the top of the modules in each course, but not always, so you may have to look for it. But right here, go to the NFNRC NetLab, go there, and at this point in time, notice it logs you in automatically via Canvas. And now I'm back logged into NetLab. And again, it has to happen via Canvas. Canvas is what connects you to this NetLab. Again, and that way you don't have to worry about using another account with another password. It's automatically done for you. Okay. All right. Once again, how do you get out of this? Right click or just click log out, close this, close the window, and you're back to Canvas and wherever you want to go. Okay. Dr. G, where are the downloads for the lab worksheets? Okay. That's something that you typically should be doing while you are getting started with the class, so just at the very beginning. But if I click on the startup module, so the modules getting started with, okay, notice here's a link to download the lab worksheets for ITEV8 with NetLab for, this is all, for all chapters, okay, 1 through 14 in DOCX format, okay? So if you click right here, and then you can click right here to download those lab worksheets, and it will come down, there we go, right here, okay, as a zip archive, and then you can extract it locally. And then my suggestion, by the way, in that regard would be set yourself up a folder. I have mine on a Google Drive, the cloud drive, that is synchronized with my home PC. And so I have something on my computer, it's uploaded to the cloud. That way I always have access, no matter where I am, to any documents that I may need for the class. But that's from where you download those lab worksheets. Remember, do not use the lab worksheets within NetAcad. Use the lab worksheets that I've supplied to you separately right here. And chances are you will find a similar link also within NetAcad. All right. I hope this was helpful to get you used to how NetLab will help you complete most, not all in most cases, but most of the labs for this class. I hope that you find the automated log-on feature handy. Again, for those of us who have been using NetLab for a while and who've always had to have separate usernames and passwords, it has solved a problem of pain. And the way the old NetLab worked, students couldn't even change their own passwords. So you always had to go through either the instructional assistant or through your instructor. No more of that. You can just click through the link in Canvas and be good. All right. If you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out at any time. During my office hours, it's typically via Zoom, but sometimes I'm on campus as well. Yeah, ask questions as they pop up. But I hope that now you are more familiar with NetLab and how to do the lab worksheets for this course. All right. We'll see you. Study hard and good luck in the class.